Hello students, today in biozoology second lesson human reproduction. Human reproductive system, gametogenesis, menstrual cycle, fertilization and implantation, maintenance of pregnancy and embryonic development, and at last pasteurization and lactation is the outline of this lesson. The human reproductive system is essential for the survival of the species. Reproduction is inevitable for the existence of a species. Reproductive system has four main functions: to produce the gametes, namely sperms and ova, to transport and sustain these gametes, to nurture the developing offspring, to produce hormones. The major reproductive events in human beings are gametogenesis, insemination, fertilization, cleavage, implantation, placentation, gastrulation, organogenesis and pasteurization. Human reproductive system. In human reproductive system, we have to describe about male reproductive system and female reproductive system. The male reproductive system comprise of a pair of testes, accessory ducts, glands and external genitalia. Testes are the primary male sex organ. They are lie in the scrotum. The scrotum act as a thermoregulator for spermatogenesis. Each testis is covered by a outermost fibrous tunica albuginea and is divided by septa into about 200 to 250 lobules, and each containing 2 to 4 highly coiled testicular tubules or seminiferous tubules. The seminiferous tubule is made of Sertoli cells and spermogenic cells. Sertoli cells provide nourishment to the sperm till maturation. They also secrete inhibin, a hormone which is involved in the negative feedback control of sperm production. Spermatogenic cells produce spermatozoa. Interstitial cells or Leydig cells are embedded in the seminiferous tubules. These cells secrete androgen, namely the testosterone hormone, which initiate the process of spermatogenesis. The female reproductive system consists of a pair of ovaries along with a pair of oviducts, uterus, cervix, vagina and the external genitalia located in the pelvic region. These parts along with the mammary glands are integrated structurally and functionally to support the process of ovulation, fertilization, pregnancy, childbirth and childcare. Ovaries are the primary female sex organ. Each ovary is covered by a thin cuboidal epithelium called germinal epithelium, which encloses the ovarian stroma. Below the germinal epithelium is a dense connective tissue, the tunica albuginea. The ovary remains attached to the pelvic wall and the uterus by a ovarian ligament called meso-ovarium. The fallopian tubes, uterine tube or oviduct, uterus and vagina constitute the female accessory organs. Each fallopian tube extends from the primary of each ovary to the uterus. The proximal part of the fallopian tube bears a funnel-shaped infundibulum. The edge of the infundibulum have many finger-like projections called fimbriae. Each help in collection of the ovum after ovulation. The infundibulum leads to a wider central portion called ampulla. The last part of the oviduct is the isthmus, which connecting the ampulla and the infundibulum to the uterus. The uterus or womb is a hollow, thick-walled, muscular, highly vascular and inverted pear-shaped structure lying in the pelvic cavity between the urinary bladder and rectum. The wall of the uterus has 3 layers of tissues. The outermost thin membranous serous layer called the perimetrium, the middle thick muscular layer called myometrium, and the inner glandular layer called endometrium. The endometrium undergoes cyclic changes during the menstrual cycle, while myometrium exhibits strong contraction during parturition. The mammary glands are modified sweat glands present in both sexes. It is rudimentary in males and functional in the female. Now the next topic is gametogenesis. Gametogenesis is the process of formation of gametes, that is sperm and ovary, from the primary sex organs in all the sexually reproducing organisms. Meiosis play the most significant role in the process of gametogenesis. Spermatogenesis is sequence or events in the seminiferous tubule of the testes that produce the male gametes, the sperms. Immature germ cells called sperm mother cells or spermatogonia undergo mitotic division at puberty and continue throughout life, which become modified and enlarged to form primary spermatocytes, which are developed with 23 pairs, that is 46 chromosomes. Some of the primary spermatocytes undergo first mitotic division to form 2 secondary spermatocytes, which are haploid with 23 chromosomes each. The spermatids are transformed into mature spermatozoa, that is sperms, by the process called spermatogenesis. Sperms are finally released into the cavity of seminiferous tubules by a process called spermiation. The whole process of spermatogenesis takes place about 64 days. The sperm production remains nearly constant at a rate of about 200 million sperms per day. Spermatogenesis starts at the age of puberty and is initiated due to the increase in the release of gonadotropin releasing hormone by the hypothalamus. The gonadotropin releasing hormone acts on the anterior pituitary gland and stimulate the secretion of follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. Follicle stimulating hormone enhances the production of androgen binding protein. Luteinizing hormone on the Leydig cells and stimulate the synthesis of testosterone. Structure of human spermatozoon. The human sperm is a microscopic, flagellated and motile gamete. The whole body of the sperm is enveloped by plasma membrane and is composed of a head, neck and tail. The head comprises of two parts, acrosome and nucleus. Acrosome is a small cap-like pointed structure present at the tip of the nucleus. It contains hyaluronidase which help to penetrate the ovum during fertilization. The nucleus is flat and oval. The neck is present between the head and the middle piece. It contains the proximal centriole and the distal centriole. The middle piece possesses mitochondria spirally twisted around the axial filament called mitochondrial spiral or nibenkern. It produces energy in the form of ATP molecule for the movement of sperms. The tail is longest part of the sperm and is slender and tapering. The sperm is the smallest human cell and the ovum or egg is the largest human cell. Oogenesis. Oogenesis is the process of development of the female gamete or ovum or egg in the ovary. During fetal development, the fetal ovary divided by mitosis and produce millions of egg mother cells or oogonia and enter into prophase 1 of meiotic division 1 to form the primary oocytes. The primary oocytes then to form the primordial or primary follicle. A large number of follicles disintegrate so as to puberty only 60,000 to 80,000 follicles are left in each ovary. The primary follicle gets to form the secondary follicle, which gets transformed into a tertiary follicle. At this time, the primary oocyte within the tertiary follicle completes its first meiotic division and form the secondary oocyte, resulting in the formation of a large haploid secondary oocyte and a first polar body. The first polar body disintegrates. During fertilization, the secondary oocyte undergo second meiotic division and produce a large cell and ovum and a second polar body. The second polar body also disintegrates. The tertiary follicle eventually becomes a mature follicle or Graafian follicle. If fertilization does not take place, second meiotic division is never complete and the egg disintegrates. At the end of gametogenesis in female, each primary oocyte gives rise only one haploid ovum. Structure of ovum. Human ovum is non-cleodoid, alecithal and microscopic in nature. Its cytoplasm called ooplasm contains a large nucleus called the germinal vesicle. The ovum is surrounded by three coverings, namely vestilian membrane, zona pellucida, corona radiata. Menstrual cycle. The menstrual or ovarian cycle occurs approximately once in every 28 or 29 days during the reproductive life of the female from menarche puberty to menopause except during pregnancy. The cycle of events starting from one menstrual period till the next one is called the menstrual cycle. Menstrual cycle comprises of the following phases: menstrual phase, follicular or proliferative phase, ovulatory phase, luteal or secretory phase. Menstrual phase. The menstrual phase occurs and lasts for 3 to 5 days. It is due to the breakdown of endometrial lining of the uterus and its blood vessels due to the decline in the level of progesterone and estrogen. Menstruation occurs only if the released ovum is not fertilized. Follicular or proliferative phase. This phase extends from the 5th day of the cycle until the time of ovulation. During this phase, the primary follicle in the ovary grows to become a fully matured Graafian follicle, and simultaneously the endometrium regenerates through the proliferation. These changes in the ovary and the uterus are induced by the secretion of gonadotrophin like follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. It stimulates follicular development and secretion of estrogen by the follicle cells. Ovulatory phase. Both luteinizing hormone and follicular stimulating hormone attain peak level in the middle of the cycle about 14th day is called luteinizing hormone surge. Induces the rupture of Graafian follicle and the release of ovum is called as ovulation. Luteal or secretory phase. During luteal phase, the remaining part of the Graafian follicle is transformed into a transitory endocrine gland called corpus luteum. Corpus luteum secretes large amount of progesterone, which is essential for the maintenance of the endometrium. If fertilization takes place, it paves the way for the implantation of the fertilized ovum. The uterine wall secretes nutritious fluid in the uterus for the fetus. So this phase is also called as secretory phase. In the absence of fertilization, the corpus luteum degenerates completely and leaves as a scar tissue called corpus albicans. It also initiates the disintegration of the endometrium, leading to menstruation, marking the next cycle. Menopause. It indicates the permanent cessation of the primary function of the ovaries. Now, fertilization and implantation. Fertilization occurs when a haploid sperm fuses with a haploid ovum to form a fertilized egg or diploid zygote. Before a sperm can enter the egg, it must penetrate the multiple layer of granulosa, that is follicular cells, which are around the ovum, forming the corona radiata. The follicular cells are held together by the acrosomal membrane. It disintegrates, releasing the proteolytic enzyme hyaluronidase. During sperm entry through the corona radiata and zona pellucida, this is called acrosomal reaction. Once fertilization is accomplished, cortical granules from the cytoplasm of the ovum form a barrier called the fertilization membrane around the ovum, preventing further penetration of other sperms. Thus, polyspermy is prevented. The first cleavage produces two identical cells called blastomeres. These produce 4 cells, then 8, and so on. After 72 hours of fertilization, a loose collection of cells form a berry-shaped cluster of 16 or more cells called the morula. The dividing embryo takes 4 to 5 days to move through the fallopian tube into the uterine cavity and finally get implanted in the uterine wall. At this point, the embryo consists of a fluid-filled hollow ball called a blastocyst. It is composed a single layer of large flattened cells called trophoblast and the inner cell masses. The inner cell mass of the blastocyst develops into the embryo and becomes embedded in the endometrium of the uterus. This process is called implantation and it results in pregnancy. If the fertilized ovum is implanted outside the uterus, it results in ectopic pregnancy. About 95% of ectopic pregnancies occur in the fallopian tube. Maintenance of pregnancy and embryonic development. The inner cell mass in the blastula differentiated into epiblast and hypoblast. The hypoblast in the embryonic endometrium and epiblast is the ectoderm. The cell remaining in between the epiblast and the endoderm form the mesoderm. Thus, the transformation of the blastocyst into a gastrula with the primary germ layers by the movement of the blastomere is called gastrulation. Each germ layer gives rise to specific tissues, organs, and organ system during organogenesis. The extra-embryonic membrane or amnion, yolk sac, allantois, and chorion protect the embryo from the desiccation, mechanical shock, and help in the absorption of nutrients and exchange of gases. The amnion is filled with the amniotic fluid to protect the developing embryo. The yolk sac form a part of the gut and is the source of the earliest blood cell and blood vessels. The allantois form a structural base for the umbilical cord and that links the embryo to the placenta, and ultimately it becomes part of the urinary bladder, which helps in the formation of the placenta. The trophoblast cell in the blastocyst send out several finger-like projections called chorionic villi carrying fetal blood and are surrounded by sinuses that contain maternal blood. Placenta is a temporary endocrine organ formed during pregnancy and it connects the fetus to the uterine wall through the umbilical cord. It is the organ by which the nutritive, respiratory, and excretory functions are fulfilled. The embryo's heart develops during the 4th week of pregnancy and circulates blood through the umbilical cord and placenta as well as through its own tissues. The primary germ layers serves as the primitive tissue from which all body organs develop. The ectoderm gives rise to the central nervous system. brain and spinal cord, periphery nervous system, epidermis and its derivatives and mammary glands. The connective tissue, cartilage and bone, muscles, organs of urinogenital system, that is kidney, ureter and gonads, arise from the mesoderm. The endodermal derivatives are epithelium of gastrointestinal and respiratory tract, liver, pancreas, thyroid and parathyroids. Human pregnancy lasts for about 280 days or 40 weeks and is called the gestation period. It can be divided into 3 trimesters of 3 months each. The first trimester is the main period of organogenesis. The body organs, namely the heart, limbs, lungs, liver and external genital organ are well developed. The second trimester formed eyelids and eyelashes, eyes blink, body is covered with fine hairs, muscle tissue develops and bones become harder. The fetus is fully developed and is ready for delivery by the end of the 9 months, third trimester. During pregnancy, the placenta acts as the temporary endocrine gland and produces large quantities of human chorionic gonadotrophin, human chorionic somatomamotrophin or human placental lactogen, estrogen and progesterone. A hormone called relaxin helps in relaxation of the pelvic ligament at the time of parturition. Parturition and lactation. Parturition is the completion of pregnancy and giving birth to the baby. The series of events that expel the infant from the uterus is collectively called labor. Throughout the pregnancy, the uterus undergoes periodic episodes of weak and strong contractions. These contractions, called Braxton-Hicks contraction, leads to false labor. As the pregnancy progresses, increase in the estrogen contraction promotes uterine contraction, which facilitates downward movement of the fetus. The descent of fetus causes dilation of cervix, of the uterus and vaginal canal, resulting in a neurohumeral reflex called fetal ejection reflex or Ferguson reflex. The secretion of oxytocin from the neurohypophysis, which in turn bring about the powerful contraction of the uterine muscles and lead to the expulsion of the baby through the birth canal. This sequence of events is called as parturition or childbirth. Relaxin is a hormone which promotes relaxing the pelvic joints and by dilation of the cervix with a continued powerful contraction. The amnion ruptures and the amniotic fluid flow out through the vagina, followed by the fetus. The placenta, along with the remaining of the umbilical cord called afterbirth, is expelled out after delivery. Lactation is the production of milk by the mammary gland. Increased level of estrogens, progesterone and human placental lactogen towards the end of the pregnancy. Stimulate the hypothalamus towards prolactin releasing factors. The anterior pituitary respond by secreting prolactin, which play a major role in lactogenesis. Oxytocin causes the let-down reflex, the actual ejection of milk from the alveoli of the mammary gland. The mammary gland secretes a yellowish fluid called colostrum during the initial few days after parturition. It contains more protein, vitamin A, and minerals, and also rich in IgA antibodies. This helps to protect the infant's digestive tract against bacterial infection. Breast milk ensures the growth of the healthy baby. That's all about this lesson. Now, home test. 2 marks. Name the 3 uterus layers. What is morula? Name the extra-embryonic membranes. 3 mark questions. Define ovulation. Define secretory phase. What is gastrulation? 5 mark question. Explain the structure of human sperm with the diagram. I repeat it. 2 mark questions. Name the 3 uterus layers. What is morula? Name the extra-embryonic membranes. 3 mark questions. Define ovulation. Define secretory phase. What is gastrulation? 5 mark question. Explain the structure of human sperm with diagram. Thank you.